What I'm going to talk about in this video will change your business, your organization for good if you apply what I teach you. All right. In case you don't know, my name is Cole Jones, and this is Bespoke Culture. I, for the last 12 to 15 years, depending on who's counting, have been helping business and organizations get their culture right. I've helped businesses get it out of the mud, and I've helped organizations turn the other direction. I mean, I've taken dead organizations and I've given them these tools, and they have been able to thrive. I have been running businesses since I was 5. I went well beyond the lemonade stand, and I've been doing business for a really long time. So today we're talking about culture. Culture. It is the heart and the windbread of society right now. It was crazy. You start reading books, and maybe 20, 30 years ago, culture didn't matter. You showed up to work, you got a check, you went home. But the generation that I came from, I'm a millennial, we care about culture. And I'm telling you why we care about culture, because we want to know that we belong to something, that what we're doing is serving a greater cause. And with less of us being religious, and I am very religious, but with less of us being religious, we want to make sure that what we're doing has some moral high ground. And so culture matters. People want to work somewhere where the culture is amazing and it aligns with who they are and what they hope their future to be. The other downside of that is you can't run the business the way you've been running it for the last 50 years. I don't care how long you've been in business and how well you know how to do what you do. If the culture sucks, the business is going to fail. And that's just kind of the reality of living in 2024 or whenever you're watching this video. But here's the thing. You ultimately can control culture as the owner or the manager of your department or your business. It's going to require some work, because culture without being intentional will turn to bad culture quickly, because there are no set boundaries. Culture thrives where there are boundaries. I think one of the cool things is when we think about culture, often we talk about race. And while races have culture, there are things that being a black man that other black people understand that others don't. It's just part of the culture. It's not a sense of racism. It is just we have a culture, and there are certain things that we do that are different than other people. And we because we understand those things, we have inside jokes, even if you've never met met the other person. But here's the cool thing. Any business can create a culture where the inside jokes and the things that are understood within the business or the organization. We could talk about a church. We could talk about a synagogue. We could talk about a nonprofit organization. We could talk about a sports team. Everybody has a culture. And within that culture, the people in the culture have secret things that they share. And when it's a good culture, they relish and enjoy and are glad about the things that are different about their culture. They're proud of them. Why do you think that people who wear Patagonia put stickers on their cars? And it's almost like it's a cultural thing. I'm from the South, and I went to a little school called Auburn University. We just happened to have like 38,000 students or something like that. And there's a culture you'll watch where most of the men dress similarly. And when I got there, I never wore these shoes, these on clouds. When I got there, but shortly thereafter, I got some shoes and I got some Birkenstocks, because the culture kind of insinuated that that's how people wear. I went from wearing my shorts like 9 inches to the 5 inches, because that was part of the culture. And then there were unspoken mores that if you wanted to be part of the culture, you started doing because you like to do it. Another thing that I noticed, like I like to surf. And so there are certain things that surfers do and say, and it's part of who we are. And so while the actual art of going down the wave is cool, but there's a language attached to being a surfer. I even started a business called Hang Loose based off of this thing I love to do called surfing. And we barely surf. We do surf a little bit at Hang Loose. But there's this culture that you want to be a part of. And there's this thing is when you have a magnetic culture, you almost don't have to say what to do. People instinctively know because it is shown to them. So let's break this down. Culture is what you create, it's what you allow, and it's what you celebrate. So it's what you create. It's literally what you do. It is like if you're a real estate company, it is part of what you create. There are things in your process that you create that are different. And so maybe you're the white glove people, and so all of you drive Mercedes around, and that's part of the culture. So it's like a culture of excellence. What we do, we not only sell houses, but we sell nice houses, and we sell nice houses in a certain zip code, and all of our colors are match, and we pride ourselves on giving people white glove service. Like, that's part of your culture. But it's also not just what you do, but it's the things that you create within the culture that are different. And so where most of us we hire a real estate broker, and I'm not in real estate, but if we hire a real estate broker, we have these expectations of how we do things. When you're curating culture, you create things that set yourself apart from everybody else. And so you have to be intentional about, who do I want to be? If we're going to curate a culture around the business or around the brand, I've got to be intentional about, who do I want to be, right? And so what I want to be, like when I start thinking through, I told you I'm really religious. I'm a Christian minister. Not necessarily in ministry right now while I'm teaching you this, but I think a lot about how do we grow churches, and how do we create brands in churches. So I know first thing, when I'm helping a church, or I'm working in my own church, I want to make sure we're friendly, because I feel like that's reflective of the Bible. I want to make sure that things are clean, and part of the culture is it being clean, and that everything is excellent. I want to make sure that everything is clear, and that we don't just use churchanese, right, or Christianese, but that what we say, if somebody who had never been to a church has language to be able to understand what we're talking about, because often in some cultures in a church, that doesn't happen. Well, we can think about it like this as well. Like, I own a retreat company. It's my favorite business that I run. The culture there is that we're going to have a lot of fun, and we're going to be adults when we do it. And when you come home, all you're going to be thinking about is that experience. Well, part of the culture there is that we're not going to have any negative feedback, right? We're going to use positive feedback to give negative feedback. And so I've had to train my people. That's how you communicate with people. We're going to get wet. And if you're scared of water, a hang loose retreat is probably not for you. We're going to we're going to curate games that nobody has ever gotten the opportunity to play. And if you have gotten to play, you're probably like on a 5 million subscriber YouTube channel, like Dude Perfect or something. But we're going to play games that are so out of the box that they're going to drive you wild. Part of the culture is that we have curated and created something that is unique. That's the first thing. So culture is what you create, but culture is also what you allow. So some things we find in our business that we didn't necessarily go and create. We didn't necessarily go in and say we want to be this, but I allowed it. It's kind of like if I had a sales team, and I've got a bully on my sales team, and he bullies people into buying, and people buy the product, but I allow him to be a bully. People's instinct about the culture of our business and our business is that we're bullies. And so as a curator of culture, and that's kind of my, I think of myself as the chief culture. I'm the chief culture guy. I'm also the chief executive officer, so there's a lot more stuff that comes on my desk. But one of the things I think about is as the chief culture curator, it's my job to say, hey man, we're not bullies over here, and that's not allowed here. We're going to respect all of our customers, whether they buy from us or not. No matter how long they take, we're going to be respectful. We're going to go above and beyond, and we're going to have radical hospitality. We're going to make sure that people have such a good time from the beginning of their process with us to the end, that they know that they want to come back. I want to be better than Walt Disney. Like when I think about the experience people get, it's going to be better than Disney World, and I'm striving to be like the Four Seasons. And so when I start thinking about like culture, it's not just what I created and what I wrote on paper and what I teach in my training. It's also, you can't do that here because it doesn't fit in the culture I want. And so being very particular about what you allow, being very particular about what you allow people to do will also create culture. Also, I can't help but talk about, when I talk about business, to talk about church as well. I see so many churches that have these brilliant vision statements, these brilliant mission statements, and they have all the beautiful like lighting, and they have the cameras, and they have screens, but then you have really mean people greeting people, or you have really mean people in leadership. You have very unorganized people that are representing your organization, and so what they end up what they tell you and they submit is a mixed message. They basically show you who y'all are, and that's never who you want to be. And so you're wondering, why can't we grow? Why can't we ever attract people? Why does no one ever stay? And what it is you're allowing people to continue in the culture that do not represent what you created. And so part of culture is not just what you create, it's not just what you want to be, but it's also what are we not going to tolerate here. Another thing I like to do, I really like to garden. And one of the things that I found out about gardening is not only do I have to plant really good seed and use really good manure and have good fertilizers that are not pesticides, and I've got to be really careful, I guess, on how I approach my garden if I want my garden to produce what I want it to produce. That means that I have to go out there and I have to go and make sure that bugs are not eating my leaves. I have to make sure that there are no weeds. And at the first sight of a weed, I'm pulling it up by hand by the root, making sure that there's nothing left of it. Because I want not only for my garden to be great, I want it to be organic. Not only do I want it to be organic, I want it to taste good. I want to make sure that everything's getting enough sun. If something needs to be rotated or it needs to be in a different container, I need to know that early, because I'm creating a culture, if you will, of fresh food. And things that will inhibit it will keep me from the harvest later on this summer and in this fall. And so I'm very careful to make sure that everything that's there is there on purpose. And the next thing is, like, you create culture. There are things that you specifically put in this mission, this vision. There are things that you don't allow, and there are things you do allow. But there's also these things that you celebrate. So you want to amplify what you're creating. You want to celebrate things that match what you're creating in this culture. So if I wrote in our vision statement or our culture statement, and I've got things written on the walls about who we are, right? I want to celebrate the person who is representing my business, and I want to celebrate them out loud, in person, and tangibly. So if somebody's doing something that is exactly like I want, like I just told you, I gave you this metaphor about this bully, right? Let's say we had the bully in sales, but then let's say I've got this person who has an excellent close rate. They're kind, they're generous. They go the second, third, and fourth mile for clients. People are singing their praises. They represent us well. I want to make sure that I sing their praises, right? Because they holistically, not just partially like the bully does, they holistically represent what I want, right? Because I want my bottom line to be well. Like, let's not even play a game. I want the bottom line of our business to do well. I want to make sure that we make really good money. I want to make sure that we represent our name and our brand well. I also want to make sure that people feel a certain way when they leave our business. I think with the retreat, my main goal is that when you leave, that it's more addictive than cocaine. I want to make sure that when you leave a hang loose retreat, that you're going to have such a good time that you want to know where the next pop-up is going to be. You want to know when we're going to develop our next property. You want to know, is there a place that you can get involved? How can I get a giveaway? Can I get in a free video? I want to make sure that you can leave this event feeling so good that you have to be a part of the next retreat. That you have to tell your boss that Hang Loose can plan our next corporate retreat, and it'll be like nothing you've ever seen before. And so when people go the extra mile like I would, I celebrate them privately and I celebrate them in public. I make sure that everybody knows that if you want to copy anybody, copy that person and not that person. Because culture, not only does it have to be curated and created, and do I have to write it down and teach it and make sure people understand it, I also, and I have to allow and disallow things. I have to reinforce what's right, because if I only tell people what's wrong, people will not know what to do right. I don't have kids, but I was a youth pastor for like 12 years. And one thing about being a youth pastor I learned about kids is that I could do a lot of fussing, especially when I was coaching basketball. I could do a lot of fussing, and they would cut off the behavior, but they never started doing what I wanted them to do until I reinforced what they were doing right. And when they saw that I cared and I loved them and I supported them and I was for them, they started doing exactly what it is that I wanted to do, because I celebrated what was right and I didn't just disallow what was wrong. If you want to build a good culture, right, a great culture within your organization, you have to be careful to make sure that you do all three of these things all the time. You can't allow something that's going to be a weed or a cancer in your organization, because what you created and what you celebrated will be nullified. But you also can't create something and never celebrate what's right, because people won't know if they're doing it right. You, as the leader, as the CEO, as the person who curates everything within the business, as the person who is the chief ideator, and I don't know if you are, you've got to make sure that whatever you do, you use these 3 steps all the time. And here's one thing I do. When somebody does something I'm proud of, I celebrate it then. And then I reinforce that it wasn't a fluke, that when it happens again, I celebrate it again. And then when things go in a direction I don't want them to go, I say, we don't do that here. I like what you were doing over there, but I don't allow that here. It's intolerable. And so the boundaries of the culture and the business are clear to the people who represent it. Because my dad had a saying. I started out in business with my dad, and we still work together in one of the family ventures. What my dad would say is that nobody will watch over your business the way that you do. And while he was right, I found a hack that if you instill good culture in your people, they will treat the business the same way you do. You just have to teach them what that culture is. So this has been a blessing. If this has helped you in any way, do me a favor, like, subscribe, go watch some more videos. Hey, comment below what you'd like to see next, and if this helped you. See you next time.